I'm H. Schuster. I'm the founder and CEO of Hustle Up. We're sponsoring the webinar for anyone who's new to Hustle Up today. I know a lot of you received invites through our partner organizations. We're super excited to have you both on the webinar and part of our creative community. Hustle Up started about 2 years ago as a network to connect creatives working in film and TV with each other, and also with the production companies and studios that need to hire you. We know that the industry's been going through quite a challenging time, and we continue to do everything we can to work with studios and production companies that are hiring. We just welcomed Hello Sunshine last week, and we continue to offer our subscription tools for staffing to all of our production company and studio partners. And we also love to connect our members who are looking for collaborators and folks to work on projects that they're setting up. So if you haven't taken a lot of time to look around the platform, please do. And you can always email us at support@hustlup.com with any questions or recommendations or suggestions. We love to talk to all of our members, especially new members. So welcome today to this great webinar called How to Build a Winning Film Festival Strategy. We have with us Darrien Gipson, who is an amazing film festival aficionado, I must say, and the executive director of SAG Indie. Darrien leads a team that's responsible for independent filmmaker outreach and specializes in teaching low-budget producing, focusing on the process of hiring professional actors via SAG-AFTRA's low-budget contracts. And she's also a frequent interviewer, moderator, speaker on panels and workshops like this one. She negotiates sponsorship agreements with film festivals around the country, spearheads the annual national advertising campaigns, and oversees SAG Indie, and throws several epic filmmaker parties, more than several probably, including one last week at Tribeca in New York City. I think there isn't a festival that Darrien, there is no festival Darrien hasn't been to. That's probably the way to say it. And so super excited that she's here to guide us through this conversation tonight. So anybody who has not accepted the Slido invitation in your chat, please do. Slido is the tool we're using for you to ask your questions of Darrien. And you can also upvote questions. So if you see a question that you think is particularly good, that you would also like to see answered, please upvote it. And at the end, we'll save about 15 minutes to come back to those questions. And anything that hasn't already been covered, Darrien will be answering for us. Matt Balsrek, who is our head of membership and marketing, is also on the call. Matt's often on the other end of support@hustlup.com, so feel free to follow up with him if you have questions after the webinar. So with that, Darrien, please take it away and tell us what the heck to do when we get to a film festival.
Oh, I'm glad that we're starting off with the really easy questions. So as H mentioned, I am the executive director of SAG Indie, and a great part of my job is literally to go to film festivals. When I was hired as the kind of traveler, I went to a new festival every other week. Now as executive director, I still go to about 19 festivals a year, and I have somebody who also works with me, and she probably goes to about the same. So there have been many festivals in my life. I haven't been to all of them because, as you all know, every 3 blocks can have a film festival. But I do try to get to as many as I can. And I hope that I will just be able to give you just some of what I've learned along the way. I mean, to be honest, anybody who tells you they can guarantee your film festival strategy and what your film's going to do is just lying to you. Their festivals are as diverse as the films that you submit into them. They all have different functions and they're different ideas. And the best you can do is try to be as informed as possible. So that is what I'm going to attempt to do, is just to give you some information. My thought is that I would try to break this down into kind of 3 main groups, because that's where I think most of the questions lie. First section being just what festival to go to. And the second one, what do you do when you're there? And the last section being, what should you do after the festival? So hopefully that makes sense to you. And as I go along, I'm going to grab the questions that were already submitted, and throw some of those in where I see appropriate. So here you go. What festival should you go to? The bottom line is before you can start really understanding what festival is right for you, you have to ask yourself a couple of questions. And the majority of the questions are, what am I looking for at the end of this festival run? Am I looking to get distribution and get to a big screen? Am I looking to get as many eyes on it, which is generally a smaller screen? Or am I looking to get my next job? Everything in that decides kind of where your emphasis will be, because not every festival you go to will have people there for acquisitions who have the ability to acquire something and put it on a big screen. Not every situation or not every film or film budget can afford to live in the streamer world, although that is a lot of what's going on right now. And honestly, sometimes you make something to prove that you can, to prove that your style as a director, your writing, just your whole kind of idea of you as a filmmaker, and in which case it's a calling card. It can also be, and we'll talk a little bit about this in a few, but the short is a version of a feature, and you're trying to use it to either drum up money or to sell the idea. All of these things come into play depending on where you're going to go. So if you really want a big screen kind of theatrical release, and again, this is just kind of conventional wisdom. There are exceptions to every rule, but there are not that many places that are going to bring in a lot of acquisition type people who have the ability to put an independent film on a big screen. And there are a couple of reasons for it that have nothing to do with the quality of your film. One is the budget, and understand that you can be too low and you can be too high. There are a lot of films that are pretty good, but are probably not going to be looked at theatrically if they're very, very low budget. Again, exceptions to the rule exist, but that 300,000 and under, there have been precious few that have been picked up. And I don't know if they think it's the quality or what the reasoning is. It's not necessarily the storytelling, but I think it becomes so small that a bigger company has a hard time kind of getting hold of it. It can be too expensive. The vast majority of films that are bought out of festivals are being bought in that $2 to $3 million range. Right now, I'm sure you all know that budgets are being crushed and collapsed, and there is a kind of an uncomfortable place in budgeting where you have a hard time getting somebody to buy you. So at 1.5 million up to about 3, you're kind of in a sweet spot. As you know, anybody who buys it, if you made it for 3, they're going to buy it from you for 3 million and like $25. And if you can take yourself to Applebee's after you've had distribution, you're actually a very successful producer. So, but after you get above 3, it gets a little uncomfortable. So from 3, for a while, it was anywhere from 3 million to about 70 million was kind of a no man's land. That's not the same anymore. It's come down to about 3 million to 20 is a little bit of a no man's land, and understand why. If you pay for something that is, let's say, $5 million, in order to get any money generated from that, you need to be in a theater. In order to get you into a theater, there's going to be marketing costs and things like that and just the behemoth of whoever is buying you, a distribution company, however it's being distributed, is going to have costs as well. So everything then piles onto that indie film. At 5 million, it's going to cost them 10 to 15 to get it to a theater to generate. So now you have a $20 million film, and make no mistake, that is on you, the filmmaker, even if you're not paying that money and they've decided how much, that money is attributed to your film. And at 20 million, you actually will have to make closer to 50 million to break even. I hope we all know that this business is not created for any film to ever break even, but we're just going to act like that is possible. So now you have to make 50 million, and that means you have to be on a decent amount of screens, which you're probably not going to get. And if it stays for more than a couple of weeks, then there's more marketing, which adds to your 50 to about 60, 65 now. And now you're trying to make 75 to 80 in order to break even. It is a cycle that is very difficult to land in. So things that happen after 5 usually have a really hard time. At 3, it's a little bit better and you can get close. There have been definitely times where things have been bought for 2 and they were by a studio that said, we love it so much that we're going to put 20 million behind it. And people thought that was really amazing. And all I could think of is, well, you got to hope that they're going to make 70 or it's considered not making its money back. And who gets the blame for that? It's not the studio, even though that was their decision. It's you've now made a movie that didn't do well, and that's an unfair thing. So if you don't listen to a whole lot, listen to these moments of Auntie Darrien telling you something. If somebody says that we are going to buy your film and distribute it, and we're going to put X amount of money behind it, that is, a decent sum of money, your next question as a filmmaker is, how are you spending that money? Where are you putting it? Because they can oversell where they're putting the money towards your marketing. And if you don't agree that it's effective, then that's just putting a yoke on you. So be very, very aware and ask questions before you sign for any distribution, which should go without saying, but it doesn't go without saying. Ask questions. Make them tell you how are they spending the money. They're going to spend 20 million and just do posters and put it on streets. I have some questions. But if they're saying they're also going to spend $1 billion on, TV ads, I'd still have some questions. Make sure that you understand how your film is being marketed. So that's one reason. The other reason is the fact of the matter is there are just not that many screens available for indie film. There just isn't. This is the thing coming out of COVID, and all of the big movies that are still stuck in waiting to come out. Everybody says, oh, I'm so sick of Marvel, but I don't think Marvel really intended to have so many movies piling up. It's that they were making them and then everything stopped and now they're stockpiled and they have to get them out. So that means that the number of screens that are going to be dedicated to independent film is extremely small. So now you're really competing. So just realize this is a hard way to go, but it really depends on the film. If you have some recognizable actors, that helps. If the theme is something that is easily kind of translatable to, a lot of different people, it's not too specialized, it's a better idea. But if it's small and quirky and really only kind of appeals to your friends who are in the roller skating community and you don't have a big name or big music, this may not be the way for you to go. So ask yourself some hard questions about what you really have in your film. Also, just know that, the amount of people who will buy in that realm are not that many. They're very much kind of scaling back on what people are buying and how much they're buying it for. So just be wary of putting all your hopes and dreams on a theatrical release, especially if your film doesn't warrant it. However, at the same time, you could go to smaller platforms. You can go to streamers. There are a lot of things that are on the smaller screens that are available. And that's why you want to keep your budgets pretty low, because they get a lot of eyes on them, but they don't pay a lot of money. Now, there's a lot of value to a lot of people seeing your film. So this is something that you may have to reconcile yourself with. This is the how many eyes do you want on your film and on your product? On a streamer, on a platform, on all the things that are either free or for small amounts, that is how many people are getting to know your work, how many people are seeing you as a writer, a director, a producer, how many people are seeing you as an actor, and that has value. When people can say, oh, I saw this great film, and somebody says, oh, I heard about it, that's something that actually speaks loudly to how you are then going to propel yourself in your career. So just realize that the amount of streamers that are out there, the pay is not necessarily really great. And you will never likely get a good enough system of accounting to be able to tell people how truly successful your project was. Like they have a few that they go, oh, it was the biggest thing that we've released, you know, all around the world, and those are great, but everything else, nobody really knows how many people have seen it. Nobody really can account it, and they're, for a while they started to tell us, and now they're not really telling us. So just know that it equates to more people and more eyes. The downside to that is that you often have to do a lot of your marketing yourself. There is no budget really for marketing on these platforms, so you have to have a plan. And the plan needs to be social network. You know, you're going to have your socials there. You're going to have behind the scenes. You're going to have, you know, be careful with clips. You don't want to give much away, especially if you haven't been signed with anyone, because they may not want too much out there. But pictures, ideas, some behind the scenes that don't involve, you know, material in the movie can absolutely help you. You should have a plan. So it's a viable option if you understand what it is you're asking for. You're not going to make a lot of money this way. So you want your budget really low. Otherwise, everybody on the planet is going to be asking you for their money back, which they will anyhow. Can't really help that. But the views are important to how many, to the cachet of your name. So keep that in mind. The last idea that you have to really ask yourself is, am I doing this so that I can get a job doing more? Am I going to get my next film? Will somebody hire me to direct? Will somebody actually pay me, God forbid, to do some of these things? And so in this case, it can be very valuable to get into a festival, to show people, especially if it's kind of an interesting idea, if it's visually really interesting, if you have really great actors, if the subject matter is really fantastic. And it doesn't have to be a big budget film to do that. The thing that comes to mind is Christopher Nolan and Memento. That is not a hugely budgeted film, but it was showy, it was great, it showed off acting, it showed off directing, it showed off writing. That's what you want to look for if you're looking for, I have another script, I want somebody to pay me, give me more money so I can make the next one. You can use it as a calling card. I've made this film. So when you do go to in front of financiers, they have something to look at that says, I have been in front of a crew. I know how to command a set, and I made this, and it's, you know, at the very least, let's hope it's focused and you can hear it, but at most, hopefully it is something really interesting, and they can say, this person has a unique point of view. So can it get me a job is extremely important. And sometimes it is the most important part of doing a film, especially if it's a short. Shorts for distribution, there's not a lot of short distribution. That's not to say there isn't any, but it's not kind of the mainstay. And a lot of times shorts can be used as a way to introduce yourself as a creative to the creative industry. And so keeping that in mind, shorts can be very effective. I'm going to take some of the questions that are around here for this because, you know, so one question was, what's the best way to get a film into a film festival? Okay, one, apply. Okay, nobody can take you if you don't actually apply. So apply, but when you apply to a festival, look carefully at the festivals. Not every film is made to go into every festival. And most people have a very big idea about where they'd like to start and premiere. And we probably all know the one or two that are the ones everybody goes to. I know everybody would love me to say the XYZ festival is great and XYZ festival is not. I'm not doing that. I have no desire to make people angry at me. I have children. I have enough people who are angry at me at every given moment. I'm not making people mad in the festival. But every festival has a personality. And so you have to look at your film and make sure that your film fits the personality of the festival. Be it big or small, not everything goes everywhere. And so, and I think I will throw this, I'll throw Sundance out because I think they would say this themselves. Not every film is a Sundance film. And getting into Sundance isn't the end all and be all of your life. If you don't get into Sundance, your life is not over. Many do not get in and still have great runs and get distribution. And getting in does not guarantee that you have now made it and Scorsese's calling you. It's a festival. It has a function. And if you've seen festivals, if you've seen films there, you can kind of get a film for what that festival likes, which is different from, say, a South by. It's different from Toronto. It's different from New Orleans. It's everybody has a vibe and a feel, and you need to know what your film really is and where it belongs. If you are doing something that is kind of horror or dark, you can go to a big festival, but there are plenty of smaller regional festivals that specialize in it. And if you get into that festival, it could actually be considered more discerning. You win one of a festival that is a horror fest, a fantasy, excuse me, festival. It has a lot of credence when you win there because everything there is competition, as opposed to another festival where they might have 5 and then everything else is drama or comedy or whatever. There's a difference in the feel. So take a look at it because regional festivals serve a very important function and you have to respect them. I have a friend who made a short, and it was a really great historical depiction kind of short, very powerful. And she got rejected from every major festival for the first 9 months. And she was pretty distraught and sad and couldn't figure out why her great film wasn't getting traction. And as we talked about it, I was like, maybe we should look at other festivals. And she started looking at regional. She started looking at ones that were going to be friendly to her historical drama of a certain era. She started to expand her horizons on the smaller festivals. And then she started getting into them. And then she got into more and more and more. And she got to put up more and more laurels. Now, this is my own jaded thing, so take this as you will. I actually kind of think that Hollywood is just kind of a giant pyramid scheme. Nobody really wants to necessarily be the first. It's hard to get that first yes, be into a festival or anything else. But if you get one, suddenly everybody is going to take a second look. Everybody's going to be like, wait, we should look at this carefully. They got into this, maybe they're right for us. And then it helps move the needle along. So getting one, obviously, if it's Main Street by 2nd Avenue in small town, that might not be the festival that you spend all your time on. But if it's at least a decent regional that you've seen films come out of, they have a good website. Some of the films that you've seen that they have listed that they've shown have gone on. It's a good indication that they're a pretty good festival. So look at your film, look at what other people are showing, and go for the one that suits it. Some of them will skew a little more drama, some like more comedy, some like, historical fiction, whatever it is. See what everybody's doing. See if there's a few films in there that you have seen and liked, and consider that festival and look at what's happened to some of their films. Obviously, if you get into the big ones, hallelujah, that's great. I know that there was a question about what is the premiere status and how does that come into play? It still comes into play. It doesn't come into play as much as it used to. It used to be if you premiered one, you could never premiere at others. Now, even the bigger ones sometimes have the 2nd and 3rd run showings of a film that they liked so much that they don't care that it's a premiere. Also, festival programmers all talk You can have one programmer who does 5 festivals. So if you're not right for this festival, they might actually invite you to one of the other festivals they're on. But they do discuss with each other. Sometimes it's just luck of the draw. You happen to have a small dramedy about zombies who open up a donut shop. Well, it just so happens that they're also got 3 other films set in a donut shop, 2 others that were zombie movies, and you just happen to come in after them, and they feel they can't program you. And it had nothing to do with your film, and it had nothing to do with the quality of it. It's just luck of the draw on how many they can take of zombie donut movies. Please don't make that. That's mine. So understand that if it doesn't work one place, it can work someplace else. And when you submit, all those programmers get a chance to see it. And then they might invite you to other festivals. So again, no one festival is going to, it's not Lord of the Rings. There's no one festival that will rule them all. There just isn't. And so be open to the possibilities. Find out what their premiere status is. The vast majority, if it's big, it's got flashy names, they want the premiere. If it's smaller, it has a couple of recognizable names, they may not. So find out. Funny thing about programmers and festivals, you can talk to them and they are very happy to give you some insight. They may not tell you like, oh, your film's in or your film's not in, but they can help you kind of understand the feel of the festival and the tone. You just have to like, it helps if you know a few, but if you don't, you can kind of reach out and, you know, if you ask the right question, they'll probably answer you. So be aware of that. Somebody asked, how do you know if the festival is worth your while or not? As I was saying, look at them, look at what they've shown for the last 2 years. Have you heard of any of the festivals? If they're in a regional area, are the festivals all from that region? That's a flag that if you're not from that region, probably not a festival for you. If they're only doing kind of local, they're probably not getting a lot of eyes on them outside of that area. So look for what you've seen, see if you recognize any of the films, or if the films that are there have been in other festival. It's probably a fairly legit. Also, they may tell you who their programmers are, or you might be able to find out. They usually don't tell you ahead of time for obvious reasons. But sometimes you can look at back years and see who wrote the blurb on it, and that blurb can then tell you some of the names who have at least been there. Make sense? Also, oh, here's one that I think I said we come back to. Advice for people who want to turn their short into a feature. Advice is do it. Like one of the best ways to explain to somebody how cool your concept is to do a short. It has to be a scene in the feature. It has to be one that has a pretty complete idea, at least as far as a beginning, a middle, and the end of that scene that says something interesting about the people in it. And it should be, you know, it can't be, this is a great trip to the supermarket. It has to have some level of high and low drama or comedy to it. But it's a great idea, especially if you need to raise money for your feature. If your short gets accolades, even better. But it is something that you can actually show financiers and say, this is what it'll be like. If by chance I'm going to put on my SAG Indie hat for a second. If by chance you hire people to be in your short that you're going to keep in your feature, and you want to incorporate the footage that you've already done into your feature, assuming that you have a professional actor and you've already signed a contract with SAG-AFTRA, you can use that footage. It's called reuse, and the reuse fee is it's very, very low. Certainly lower than redoing that whole scene again. And you know, time is money, as we all know. So you can reuse it. It's a very nominal fee. I don't know if we have any others. Festival tiers. You know, everybody has an idea of what they think is a big festival. I think we all know them. Whether or not you think that that festival is helpful, there are some that I would say pretty helpful, and some I would say, who won last year? Can you name it? Can you name the film? Can you name the filmmaker? And there's some very big festivals that most people have a hard time naming what one. Maybe it's not the end all and be all for you. Okay, so that's kind of like, how do you pick a festival? You pick your festival based on your film and what your film needs and what you want, and does it fit? See, it's really far simpler. And I know everybody is still going to look and see what time is the Sundance due date, and that's fine. But if you do not get in, that's fine too. You can still have a really amazing festival run. And sometimes, like my friend, she got so many accolades that she came around, and some of the big festivals picked her up on the second level of her festival run. So that's section one. I know I'm talking fast, but we don't have that much time. Okay, how to fest. I think this is one of the more important things to talk about, because there are people who can get into a festival, and when you go, your film shows, people love it, they clap, they laugh, they cry, whatever, and then you leave and you don't have anything to show for it. That is a major mistake. There are things that you need to do in order to make being at the festival work for you. One is that you need to start thinking about budgeting some money and putting some money aside for festivals from the beginning. Obviously you feel like every dime you have is going to go into your project. I get it, but in the between getting it in the can and getting it, locked, you really do have to think about how you're going to raise a little money to get you to festivals. There's nothing worse than having your festival play big at a festival and you're not there to either see it, answer questions, meet people, nothing. That said, you don't have to go to all of them. Be smart about it. Which one do you think will work? Which one do you think you can afford? There's some that are really great, but they're so expensive. And you have to kind of say, do I do that one or do I do 5 elsewhere? So keep it in mind. But obviously, if you have a bigger film, higher budget, some known actors, that's the time where you're going to want to possibly get a film publicist. You may have a sales rep. In those instances, you want to be there. Their whole job is to get people to either interview you, cover your film, get people interested in buying your film, etc. You need to be there. But that's expensive. Not every film is going to have that. In fact, the vast majority of them that are not, oh, I just happen to get Olivia Colman. If you don't have Olivia, because I'm going to call her that, like I know her, then you may not have enough money for all of that with you. I would say one of the things you really need to have when you're in your production is actual good production stills. You need a photographer who will give you good stills, because that's going to go in your EPK. If you do have a film publicist, she's going to need it. The festivals are going to ask you for a picture for their production guide or on their website. You're just going to need it for people who are seeing it, who are interested in buying it. So get good stills. If you can, get a lot of kind of footage behind the scenes as well of your actors, etc., because that all kind of plays into it and that can help you in your socials, etc. So pay attention to that while you're filming. And then go to the festival. Pick the ones that you want to go to them. Make sure that when there is a filmmaker party, lunch, whatever it is where they put the filmmakers together, go to them. Meet the other filmmakers. It is an important part of you developing as a filmmaker is to build your peer group. There's this thing about filmmaking that everybody always wants to look up. I want to meet that person. That person is the head of this studio. That person is the head of this company, et cetera, et cetera. And looking up is fine. If you can meet the head of a studio, why wouldn't you? But the real value is looking from left to right. Who's next to me who has a film that I've seen and I really like? Or who's next to me who has a sensibility and a personality that I really like? That is incredibly important. And then when you're at a festival, go see their films. See if they really are good. See if they really do have you know, a great writing style, etc. Because those are the people who are going to become your people. When you're writing your next project and you need somebody to read it and give you really good feedback, the people who you've met, who you've read their work and you've gotten to know them, they become your trusted folk. But also it can be something as mundane as, where did you go for insurance? I liked the car. How'd you get the car? How much did it cost? I'm trying to budget something and I noticed that you had this. How much did that cost? These are the things that your friends who are in your peer group can help you understand, and it can be invaluable. So a lot of what you want to do is networking, but it isn't networking only to the people who you think can do something for you. You want to have people and you want to have relationships that are not transactional. You're going to offer to read their work if they want. You're going to ask them to read yours. You're going to keep in touch and you're going to watch them. And chances are, if your film's going to festivals and they're going to festivals, you're going to run into each other again. Ask them, what other festivals are you looking at? Where have you, submitted? So this is an important part of your development because these are the people who are going to rise up, and one of you is going to go first, and hopefully they will help out and bring other people with them. So pay attention to who's around you. I know somebody asked about asking for waivers for entrance fees for festivals. I mean, let's face it, everybody's broke. We all know this. We're broke. Festivals are broke. When COVID hit, festivals lost probably 75% of their funding. And while they were able to make up some of it in different ways, the sponsorship has not come back fully yet. So when you ask for a waiver, just be aware that you can ask and hope and get one, but if you don't, it's not them being jerks, but sponsors that come into festivals usually earmark their money. I'm going to sponsor either this group of films or this kind of film or this theater or this thing. And very rarely does that money say, I'm going to just pay for your paper. I'm going to pay for your staff. I'm going to pay for your internet. So they have to have money in order to get all those programmers paid. And a lot of that comes from those entrance fees. So ask away. If they have it and they can, they will. But if they can't or they say no, just realize they're trying to keep their lights on too. And we all collectively need them to keep their lights on because we need our films to get out there and to be seen. So ask, but just don't be surprised if it doesn't always happen. I'm going to go to another question that was kind of germane here. How much budget should you set aside for film festival fees? And it asked about Film Freeway. I'm not going to make a statement about Film Freeway. You have to do your own diligence and see if it works for you. But as far as figuring out how much money, a lot of it is location. How big is the festival? How many people go to the festival? Is it going to give you either the eyes, the distribution, or the job? And then figure out how much it would cost to get there. Take a look at how much hotels are or Airbnb. Like I build a festival for we literally go to 35 or 36 festivals, but we sponsor probably 60 festivals a year. But I build a budget on what I think it will cost to go to Kansas on a random February. And I try to just figure out that amount of money. I try to look and see what their hotels are, figure out how much they cost. If all they have is a Ritz-Carlton, it's probably not someplace we're going to go. But if they have a variety of hotels and I think I can have a decent amount, I will build a budget. Do the same. Look and see how much money you can raise, and then figure out what's the best way to distribute it to the different areas you might want to go to. And you may have to go, oh, this place is really amazing, but it will take up the entire budget to get there. Might have to do something different. Also, I want to mention that, so places like Cannes, it's a bear to go. It's incredibly expensive to stay. It's a hard one. However, there are sales agents and independent sales agents that it's a great market. So you might consider Depending on your if you're doing a festival run, if you're at the end of it, etc., you might consider talking to a sales rep who's maybe not a giant, but one who's got a good track record. I've met quite a few and they actually sell. So do your own diligence, but consider that. Anything else in this area? Okay. Oof, I'm not talking fast enough. What to do after the festival? So you've gone to the festival. Let's say, well, in a perfect world, you got the big award or the audience award, things like that. In which case, if you do, it would really behoove you to, one, crow it from the mountaintop. It's a huge success and you should own it and love it and you should use it. You definitely, we don't really hand out postcards as much anymore, trying to save trees, but laurels still matter. And laurels matter even when they're not the big three or big five, if you will. If you have audience award in some place or, jury award, honorable mention from pretty much any festival, I would throw that up there on your social, on your page. If you have any kind of thing that you send out to people, make sure your laurels are there. It'll make everybody just pay a little bit more attention. Any accolades that come your way, definitely. Obviously, if you want a big writing award, find a way to mention that. Might have to go in your bio, but don't be shy about patting yourself on the back. If it's your kindergarten class, well-written kind of gold star, you might want to leave that off. That's not going to be impressive. But there are lots of labs. If you've been into a major lab, if you have won writing awards from these groups, it doesn't hurt to add it to your bio at the very least. It may not work it's not a laurel, so you probably don't need it on your one sheet. You're also going to then have a discussion with somebody. If you're not getting picked up out of the festivals, which happens to probably 65% of the films and festivals are not picked up at a festival, they might happen afterwards. So a lot of this is looking at who's around, what was selling. Obviously, if a big distribution company bought one zombie donut movie, you're not going to go and try to talk to them about yours. So you're going to try to go to something that's kind of on their level, but not them, and see if they might be interested. And then it's really a race. They may not, because there's already a zombie donut movie, but they also might like yours more and want to try to beat them. Doesn't hurt to try. The second thing is, seems really obvious. If your film goes to a festival and gets, nicely written up in any way, or people like it, but it doesn't get bought, the most important thing is to tell them what you're ready to do next. It's a screenplay that's ready to go. It's an idea. You're working on it. Because if I'm a big distributor and I really liked zombie donut making, but I can't sell it, it's not my mandate. And I've worked for a company where we had very much a distinct mandate. I worked for a celebrity, and I had to buy, and I had to look at things that I thought he would like. Didn't always match my taste. So if I can't take your project on, because I know that the company has said, we're not doing any more zombie movies, but I like you, then my question is, what else do you have? And you should have in your back pocket, not physically, what other screenplays you're writing, what other ideas you have ready, etc. And you should be able to do it in a 2 to 3 minute easygoing pitch. I have a thing, it's really interesting. It's about people who dig underground chasing warthogs. Again, that one's mine as well.
Darren, I'm gonna jump in for just a second. We have about 10 minutes left, and I actually have a follow-up question on that. How much can folks reuse the same submission materials for a festival or a screenplay competition at a festival, for any of those things, how much should they recycle answers to questions and so forth? Or should it really be that they're customizing it for every festival?
I think it's a combination. I am not one who likes to reinvent the same wheel over and over again. I think it's a waste of time. However, I also want them to know that I like their festival, that I'm not throwing spaghetti at a wall. I'm trying to be strategic, and that I think that they're the right festival for me. So anytime I can reuse it and maybe rework it, maybe just mix it up a little, I will do that. You never know if you're going to get the same programmer. So it kind of is nice to at least show some effort without starting from scratch. I think that, you know, work smarter, not harder is definitely a thing here. So I want to make sure that I get in one thing that I think people don't talk about a lot, but it is one of the most important things that I can tell you. If you should go to a festival with your film, and some distributor A approaches you and says, I love your film, I want to distribute your film. Everybody gets super happy because obviously our goal is to get our films out there. However, there's one thing that you have to know, and it can save your financial health as well as your career. If you're using, if you're dealing with SAG-AFTRA, they will give you this document in your packet. There's this thing called a distributor's assumption agreement, and it's probably one of the more important documents you will run across. If you have it and somebody wants to distribute your film, you need them to sign this document, or you need your lawyer to write the verbiage into your contract. Here's what this says, and I'm sure if there are any distributors here, they are grinding their teeth right now, but bigger ones, it's just par for the course. Everybody knows you have to do it. Others will sometimes tell you that they do not do this, and then you have a decision to make. It says, you've made a film for $3 million. I, distributor A, am going to pay you $3,025 lunch for your film. And you know that that's probably all you're going to make. You know, anybody who's trying to tell you there's going to be a ton on the tail end of it is basically not telling you the truth. My job now is to sell your film as many places and in as many markets as I can. I now control the rights. So I'm going to go, let's say, to the UK and try to get into theaters there. These are going to be random numbers, so please don't take any of this too seriously. So let's say I get $50,000 from the UK for your film. Outstanding. Next, I'm going to go to Spain, and I'm going to go for cable. Maybe I'll get 25,000. Maybe I'll go someplace else and get 100,000. Whatever it is, this is money that's coming to me, the distributor. It is not coming to you, the filmmaker. Every single time I do that, and your film shows in the UK, and it shows on Spanish cable, and it shows wherever, the moment it does that, there is a residual bill that is starting to tick. The distributor's assumption agreement says that if I sign it as a distributor, that when I make that $200,000, $500,000 for the next however amount of time I have contracted it for, so it could be 20 years, it could be in perpetuity, I have to pay the residuals that are going to become due from my selling it. So if I made $200,000 for this, but there is a $10,000 residual bill, I will pay it. If, as a distributor, I do not sign that, then that $10,000 bill goes to you all, the filmmaker, and it will do so for the life of that film. So you could get a bill quarterly that says, hey, happy Tuesday, you have a bill for $5,000 for residuals due from Spain. You could go 6 months and then get a 10,000. It's impossible to know how much that bill will be and how often you'll get it. But you have to ask yourself, if somebody says, I can sell your film, I can do really well, but I don't want to sign a distributor's assumption agreement, then they're making money making those deals, and you get the grand prize of a bill quarterly that you just get to keep writing checks for. The more talented they are at selling your film, the longer you'll get those bills, the longer you'll pay it. So again, if you don't listen to a whole lot that Auntie Darrien has told you, remember that one. Because if you cannot pay that bill, then the people who you owe the money to, i.e. SAG-AFTRA, looking out for their actors, they're going to come knocking on your door. And they're going to try to figure out ways in which they can grab some rights to sell, auction, whatever, so that they can make some money to pay the people who are owed money. And since those actors only got paid a few $100s a day to make this, they are owed residuals. Do not forget. And if you get lucky enough to get distribution, find out where that form is and make sure that you see that it is signed or that where it is in the contract, because that is going to save your financial life. Hopefully you have an LLC or the equivalent, so they're not going to come and repo your car, but it's still a bill and it's still.
That's great
you.
advice. And it leads me to just mention to folks that we are next month for our webinar going to be doing something on film distribution and film financing. So
don't give them my name and tell them I told you all this.
But I think actually, Darrien, that sets up one last question I'd like to ask in the last few minutes we have, and then we can look and see if there's any others. But somebody did drop in the Slido the question: what are some of the most common mistakes you see people make? And I'll put some context around that. Let's talk about common mistakes when applying to a film festival. And then maybe common mistakes once you get in or once you're there. Are there one or two things other than a really important agreement, the distribution assumption agreement? Is there anything else you would sort of flag for folks?
Yeah. So when you're applying to festivals, one, try to hit your deadlines, obviously. But if your film is not quite done, you can talk to them. And they may look at it, what you have. They may say, send it to us closer. There are films that get into festivals 10 days before the festival starts. So I have a personal mantra that says, do not say no to yourself. Other people are perfectly capable of saying no. So go ahead and ask. So don't negate the idea that you can get into a festival because you're not quite done, not quite locked. Give them a call. Say, we think this is a great film. We're not quite locked. Can we have a little extension? Can we send it to you? What can we do? The worst they can do is say no, but some of them will say yes. So that's one thing. Don't worry. Hit your deadlines when you can, but don't say no to yourself if you're not ready.
That's great advice. And I think it's really important. You don't want to pester film festivals. You don't want to send them every 2 days. Oh, I have a new version.
God, yeah.
A new this, so I have a new cut. But you certainly do, if you want to put your best foot forward, have the opportunity to talk to them and say, hey, if I get it to you by this date, like what's the drop dead here, right?
Yeah. And they'll tell you. I mean, they're very open. They'll say, look, we might be able to do it. Or, you know what, we're inundated. We've already got 60,000 submissions. We are having a hard and fast cutoff date. And knowledge is key. So that's one of them. The other one is not letting people know who you are at a festival. It's shocking that when it shows and you get to stand up and you get to answer a couple of questions, that's great. But when you are at lunches, parties, things like that, you should not be shy. You're not going to walk around saying, I've made the best film here in this festival, because other filmmakers will probably kill you. But hi, who are you? I'm so-and-so. Oh, I'm a filmmaker. I made this film, and I will also say that people often give me their postcards. They also give me their business cards. And I quite often say, please don't, because you're wasting paper giving it to me. I am not going to buy it. The postcard's probably not going to help me. I will remember it far better if you have a conversation with me, and then I will look for your film and do it, than the person who walked by me in 3 minutes, handed me a postcard and kept on moving. So when you are making those discussions, when you are having conversations with people, make it meaningful. Doesn't have to be long, but it has to be sincere.
Not just a sales pitch, right?
It's not a sales pitch. You're not going to look people in the eye and, ask them a question. But people do not like to be treated in transactional ways. They don't want you to walk up and be like, come buy my film. No, buy. That it's very abrasive. So be careful and be kind and be gracious, because a lot of people will feign boredom, and that is not going to get you in anyone's good graces.
And I
So,
think, that extends really to people who go to festivals who may not have a film in the festival too, right? You
oh,
might
absolutely.
to network. There's a question in there about what do you recommend screenwriters do at festivals? I think it's the same thing. Go to the parties, go to the mixers, go to the screenings that interest you, chat with people in line while you're waiting to get into the theater. Oh, do you have a film in the festival? What's your film about? Oh, you do this. That's awesome. I was just looking for somebody to do that kind of work on a thing I'm working on. Like, there are a lot of ways to make connections with people that will go beyond just those couple of days at the festival and
Yeah,
trying to
find your people. I've had people I do a brunch at Sundance, and I've had people combine and do their next film together.
Yeah.
Because they met and sat down and really liked each other.
Exactly.
So meet people, but be genuine. That's one of the biggest things about it. This is not as fake an industry as people like to tell you. People appreciate real interaction, and they don't trust people who only want to take and don't want to give. So,
One last question. This is a delicate one. You can answer it however you choose, but campaigning behind the scenes. You submit your film to the festival. You know someone who knows someone who knows the head programmer. You this, you that. Should you try and use those connections to put a face to the script, put a face to the title of the script, or the film, I should say? Do you want to use those networking relationships to try and stand out in the application process?
look, we can't afford to not use everything at our disposal. These festivals are getting thousands and thousands of submissions. You just have to be nice about it. If you know somebody who knows a programmer, the question isn't, hey, can they get me in? It's, will you just let them know that your friend has submitted? Maybe they'll just keep an eye out for it. Maybe they'll just try to take a look or ask somebody how it is. So, your ask isn't ginormous. You don't want to be like, can you, if I give you, if I give you $10, will you give me the audience award winning? You want to just say, can you, let them know, hey, I have a friend who submitted and I really like them. They're a great filmmaker. So if you happen to see this go across, take a look at it. That's a low level ask, and it doesn't smell, So yeah, use everything at your disposal, but use it easily. Keep your ask to a minimum.
Respect.
And just ask people to keep an eye out for it if they can. And you'd love to hear their opinion, and then say thank you and walk away.
There you go. That's right. This was great, Darrien. I know we're a few minutes over. I want to be respectful of your time and the other folks on the call. Thank you so much for giving us so much of your time and your insights and your wisdom. It's always delightful to hear you talk about this industry, especially as crazy as this industry is right now. It's good to hear some real insights about this process. If anybody is looking to connect with Darrien, she is on HUSSLUP, and you can also email us any additional questions you might have at support@husselup.com. And again, we'll be doing our next webinar next month on financing and distribution. And so we'll be getting word out about that probably in the next 2 or 3 weeks. So I really appreciate everybody joining us. And we very much appreciate you, Darrien. Thank you so much. And everybody have a great evening. Remember, let's hustle up.